spotlighters. Okay, so we are, oh, it's coming. You there? Okay.
I think I've changed it, have I?
Welcome to today's session of Rito Ora Talks, hosted by BreastfeedingNZ. So this is a series of sessions dedicated to everything infant feeding. My name is Alicia and this is Jenny, and today's session is all about breastfeeding a newborn.
Okay, this is our Rito Ora team. We support mamas from pregnancy through to 2 years of age with their breastfeeding, infant feeding journey. Starting in pregnancy, where we do some information sessions on what normal feeding looks like, and giving some hints and information to make it a bit easier in those first few days and weeks. We also do we do this by home visits, coming to see you early in your once you've had baby. We do phone, texts and online support to help. We do introducing Kai when your baby's about 6 months old, little talks on how to do that well. We do some cooking classes, cooking on a budget. We also do some breastfeeding corridor, where we talk with other health professionals, just giving some information around breastfeeding. This is us. We're a team of 6.
Okay. So before we crack into the breastfeeding, we'll run a poll, and just acknowledging that there is only one participant in the poll, but it's still fun to do. So here we go. So there are 2 common reasons that people give up breastfeeding before they wanted to. Would you like to hazard a guess as to what the 2 are? And this is multi-choice, so just select whichever 2 you think are the reasons that people more commonly give up breastfeeding. So cool. We'll end that poll. Share results. So you should be able to see that. And those 2 are absolutely correct. So it's pain, sore nipples more commonly, and then low milk supply, which can be low milk supply from not understanding how the milk supply works, and therefore as mums I think we doubt ourselves if our babies are feeding all the time without knowing that can be really normal. We automatically seem to think it's low milk supply, but it's not always, and that is why it's a great idea to get really good support around breastfeeding. One more person put that in. Anything else want to add to that?
No, that's great. Welcome, Vicky. We're just having a chat about, we're just starting off on positioning a latching baby. Would you like to tell us, if you wanted to come off mute and just tell us, are you pregnant? Do you have a baby at the moment?
Or you can pop it in the chat if coming off mute's not an option. And just so you know, Vicky, and we are recording this session as well. Yeah. All right, here's a little bit about positioning and latching from our people with Shivani. I'm not sure if you can hear that sound. So a few little tips there. Well, Vicky has a 6-week-old. Welcome, Vicky. So what we will do here is I might actually just stop the share and we'll just go over positioning and latching. So a lot of common concerns with breastfeeding can come back to positioning and latching. Getting a really good position and latch means that baby will have an effective feed, which is just another way of saying baby will feed really well. They drain the breast and will get a full feed when they're at the breast. And getting that deep latch is how we are going to make sure that feeding is comfortable and that baby again works really well. And so if we have good positioning, good latching, this is really the bread and butter of breastfeeding. So what it looks like, we've got my doll here, her name is Lilith, is when we're positioning our babies, we want our babies to be tummy to mummy. So one of the more common things that I see when I go into homes and I help with feeding is often babies are placed on the breastfeeding pillows and their tummies are facing the ceiling. Now, when their tummies are facing the ceiling, they have to like turn their head, kind of like strain to. Welcome to everyone who's joining. Welcome. And then when they turn their head and straining like that, they can't get very good feed. If you think about it, like if you have your head up into the side and you're trying to have your tea or water, whatever it may be, you're not going to be able to feed very well yourself. It's going to put a lot of strain there. And also it's going to be really hard to keep feeding for that whole amount of time. Welcome to everyone who's just joined as well. We are just going over positioning and latching, and just so you know, the session is being recorded. It'll be great if you don't mind popping in the chat if you are pregnant or if you have a baby. Cool. So tummy to mummy, and honestly, if you've got tummy to mummy, you're halfway there. Keeping a baby really, really close to you as well. So the closer the better for a deep latch. Making sure that, just like the video we watched said, baby is unswaddled, and although babies can be very handsy, trying to keep the hands almost like hugging the breast, so out this way. And that means the closer baby can get, the deeper baby can get. So we want to keep baby really, really firmly close into us. Tummy to mummy, you're halfway there. And then little things like just looking down and seeing that baby's ears, shoulders and hips are all in a nice straight line. Putting your hand behind the neck and shoulders. So putting it in the shape of the letter V or Y or whatever that might look like to you, and behind the neck and shoulders. So what we're not doing here is that we're not holding the head. Okay, so we want kind of like that little groove of your hand to right and snug there. And you can be quite firm. This is where you apply a bit of pressure just to hold baby in place. Okay, so you've got your positioning. And it doesn't matter if you feed this way, this way, this way. It's always tummy to mummy. Okay, so I think more commonly in that rugby hold, I might see babies' tummies facing the ceiling. It's always tummy to mummy. So tummy to mummy, and then we want to think about the first point of contact of baby to breast is that chin goes in first. The same as if you drink from a cup of tea, right? Your chin goes in first, like that, and it stays there. Okay, so baby's chin anchors into the breast and it does not move. We're not moving baby around, okay? Just keep baby here. So it'll be that way, but keep baby there. And then what happens, I'll show you with my hand. Imagine that this is baby's mouth. So that chin goes in, that bottom lip kind of goes towards the bottom of the areola, underneath the nipple. And the nipple's kind of facing up at baby's nose. Okay, so baby kind of has to like look up at the nipple. So baby's chin goes in there, and then what babies will do, they're born with this instinct to open up their mouths really wide. When they open up, we push baby to breast in a fast movement. Get a good angle for you there, in a really fast movement. So open up, fast movement on. So we're always bringing baby to breast. Okay, what we're not doing is we don't go breast to baby. So we're not just trying to shove breast in there.
He's asleep.
Hey guys, do you have a question?
Not at this stage. I've just signed in.
Oh, cool. Welcome. And have you got a baby or are you pregnant?
Yes. Who's feeding right now?
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So
Sorry, mute my.
that's all good. So I guess one way to think of it is we're trying to get a bit of a latch where there's more of that bottom area underneath the nipple in baby's mouth and less of the kind of the top, if that makes sense. So it's an asymmetrical latch. Kind of think of it like that. Nipple's going underneath the top lip. Okay, so it's not symmetrical. We're not trying to get the nipple right in the middle of the mouth. That will mean that baby has a shallow latch, so baby can't feed as well. Baby doesn't feed as well. We don't make as much milk. And obviously our babies don't get much milk and it can be painful. So really just spending the time, and look, it can take time. It can take multiple feeds, a few days, weeks. Just be really gentle and patient with yourself when you're learning how to position your baby like that. What we will do is we'll send some resources through to BreastfeedingNZ that they can pop on their page. They're also available on our Facebook group and Instagram that have videos with real babies and real boobs on how to position and latch. Sharing our PowerPoint. There we go.
All right, fine. So this is just a little slide showing you some of those principles that Alicia's been just demonstrating for you. So signs for good latch on this side and not so good on this side. And if we see the differences here, chins away from the breast, whereas a good sign is that baby's chin's tucked right into the breast, just like Alicia was showing you with the doll, anchoring that chin and bottom lip right into the breast. Nose is free to breathe, so here chin's still in and nose is free to breathe. Here baby's chin's away, nose is squashed into the breast. So when you picture if baby's latched well, if the nose is squashed into the breast, if we are managing to tuck that baby in nice and close, we end up with this position, still chin in but nose free. And so there's no need to be kind of sitting holding the breast away from baby's nose, rather tuck baby in nice and even closer, hug baby close, and that will keep that positioning for you. Chin indented again here, cheeks nice and round compared with the chin away from the breast. And if you can see here, often when they're not have a nice deep latch on the breast, you see those chins kind of sucking in and hollowing out a little bit compared with having their mouth full with the breast. And you can see here, good starting position, just what Alicia was showing you with the doll, chin anchored in, bottom lip here, and then when baby opens, we're going to bring baby in swiftly for that nice deep latch. Baby also twisted here, like Alicia said, we often do see babies feeding on those feeding pillows, breastfeeding pillows in that position. Bring them up to the breast and hug close to you. So baby's tummy to mummy. If baby's lying on the pillow and you're leaning down trying to feed, baby's a bit trying to feed like this, like you having your cup of tea like this, yeah? Not very comfortable. So roll baby up so you've got the hips, shoulders, ears all in alignment. We just talk about a lot about the latch because what we did start the session off was talking about the two main reasons mums stop breastfeeding. First is pain, so a deep latch pops the nipple right back here in baby's mouth, right back here, so it stops it, it's safe back there compared with if it's just inside baby's mouth. So getting the latch right stops the pain, which is, like we said, is one of the main reasons mums give up breastfeeding, and the other one is low milk supply. So baby getting a good deep latch and draining the breast well. Supply and demand means that you have a good milk supply, and we'll talk a bit about that later.
Okay, so here we have a slide all about the different stages of milk you'll have, and those of you that are pregnant or have a baby in the first week, maybe this week, this slide is something that's really good to know about. So in pregnancy, at around about the midway point of pregnancy, our bodies start to make colostrum, and we have that for the first few days, between 2 and 5 days, more commonly 3 and 4, like you see up on your screen. Colostrum can be referred to as liquid gold. There's so much goodness about colostrum. It's great for baby's immune system and yeah, things like that. The amount of colostrum that we have is really important to know about. So in the next slide, we'll show you why that's important as well. But what you see up on your screen in terms of amounts is correct. So a few drops of colostrum, that's what we're expecting to see. When your milk comes in, and if someone asks you, hey, has your milk come in? What they're asking you is, have you gone from colostrum to transitional milk? And often, not all the time, but often we can feel a difference in our breasts when we go from colostrum to transitional milk. They feel fuller, they feel heavier. There's a little bit more milk in there, which is exactly the right size for our baby's tummies. The colours you see on the screen are common, but you know, milk can be a variety of different colours. Sometimes colostrum can be like clear, see-through, and transitional milk might not always be yellow. Sometimes it's a little bit green or things like that. So don't get too hung up on the colour. All colostrum, transitional milk, mature milk is good milk. And then towards the end of the second week, we settle at what's called mature milk. And it looks a little bit more like the milk that we see around our cow's milk and plant-based milks look like it these days, hey? And that's the appearance of that milk is what we have moving forward. But our breast milk is alive and it's always changing according to our environment, according to our baby's age, according to so many different things, day to night, things like that. So it looks like this, but there's so much more to it than just how it looks.
So looking at this chart here just shows us a little bit about what else. If we're looking across at the top, we've got the days when baby's born, day 1, day 2, up to day 4 to 5, and then past that. But looking at baby's tummy size, a little marmal size on day 1. And you can see just above it, like Alicia said, a couple of drops to up to 5 mils is normal. So a few drops to even half a teaspoon is normal in the first day. Colostrum's quite thick, as you saw in the picture previously. It's just a little amount. Babies don't rely on it for nutrition particularly. It's called the first immunisation. So they're getting all of those goodies that you've read and heard about that breast milk and colostrum has. To line baby's gut, to protect them from any bugs and things that are around while their immune system is developing, because it's brand new into this world. Also, another reason that it is very thick and just a small amount, because baby's learning to latch, suck, swallow, breathe. They have to coordinate all that, and that happens naturally. But it's a very safe space to practice that with just a little bit of thick fluid coming towards you. If we jump ahead to, say, looking at this, how the tummy size increases along here, if we jump to that on day 5, till we're getting that, 50 mils or so of milk coming towards us, by then we've practiced and learned how to do that. So it's a nice, safe way to learn to suck, swallow, breathe, and coordinate all of that with just a little bit of fluid coming towards you, versus that whole big 50 or 60 mils coming towards you. And you can see along here the sizes, and baby's tummy grows quite rapidly, coinciding with your milk coming in, as Alicia described it. So usually day 3, 4, 5, when your milk comes in, when you're feeling a bit fuller and a bit heavier, it coincides with your tummy baby's tummy stretching to that size. So your milk coming in, having that volume, coincides with baby's tummy getting a bit bigger, and baby needing a bit more volume for actual nutrition by then. In the first few days, it's just that little bit for practice. And how do we know that baby's getting what he needs? It's this chart here, looking at wet and dirty nappies. Wet nappies, as you can see, day 1, 1, day 2, 2, day 3. And then again, coinciding with your milk coming in, say after day 4, that's when we're starting to talk about those 6 to 8 wet, heavy, clear looking nappies per 24 hours. More importantly, in the first week is the poos that baby's passing. So in day 1 and 2, we've got that thick black meconium, quite tar-like. Day 2, as some milk's coming through, it becomes a little bit thinner black, going to a darker green looking. Meconium is quite heavy and it's quite bulky in baby's gut. So one of the reasons that babies lose weight in that first week, because they're losing quite a bit of weight from the meconium that's sitting in their gut. But the colostrum up here in those first day or 2 is a laxative. So what it does is it helps to push out all that meconium. And then once the milk's coming through, you start to see the colour of poos changing from the black to dark greenish, getting a bit thinner to a bit brownish looking, like the picture here, then a bit kind of in between here is brown and a bit seedy looking, and then to that yellow, which we all think of as normal for babies to pass. So it's a really good indication for you to just have that in your mind, thinking about, it just helps to reassure you that baby's getting milk and it's all progressing nicely. And if it's not, then you can talk with your midwife about that or your breastfeeding supporter. Often mums would worry that in the first couple of days there's not enough milk because it is just those drops, but no, that is normal, and it's designed that way for many purposes.
Okay, so those of you with young babies, this is what you may be living at the moment, fussy evenings. So fussy evenings can be entirely normal. It's something that, there's often like a bit of a, you can think of it like a honeymoon period when the baby's first born. Not always, but often you might see a baby that appears to be settled. And then fussy evenings hit, usually between 4 and 7 weeks, you might see them start. And it's that late afternoon, early evening, where babies just want to be on mum. They just want to feed, and they don't want to be put down. They might be crying and unsettled. Just knowing that, hey, look, this is really normal and expected. If your baby's doing this and your baby is right on track, and knowing that soft breasts, so in that late afternoon, early evening, often our breasts feel softer. They're not really full and hard like they might be in the mornings. Now, softer breasts are great to feed from. If you feed off your softer breasts, it will actually increase your supply. So just to keep feeding your baby in that time. And there's a high fat content in the milk with those softer breasts. So what we see is often babies, you kind of just parked up on the couch during this time, and you're just kind of feeding. You might want to try some breast compressions to help with kind of getting that milk across, which Judy will demonstrate here. It's just kind of like pushing. So when you're feeding, listening out for those swallows, and when the swallows start to kind of slow down or baby starts to come off and be a bit fussy, breast compressions where you're pushing in and forward, hold for a second, and then let go. So in, forward, hold, let go. That can just help to force out a little bit more milk to help to keep baby on that one side for longer. So use some breast compressions. Other tips is it's a great time to do skin to skin with your baby. So skin to skin helps to lower stress hormones and things in mum and in baby. It can be quite an intense period. Baby wearing is really great if you're able to at this time of day. But it just really kind of, it's okay to swap sides, go from side to side to side, but listening out for swallows while you do that. It often does coincide with dinner time, which is something that a lot of the mums I speak to have talked to me about. So, knowing that, hey, if you're in this phase where fussy evenings can be really normal, maybe preparing dinner earlier in the day, or, things on toast can be great dinners in this period, or utilising support people. Those people that might offer to help you, hey, if you need a hand with anything, let me know. Say, yes, I need some dinners because we're going through these fussy evenings. But it doesn't mean that, hey, your baby's broken, that there's a problem that we need to fix. It can just be really, really normal. I hope you've got sound here. If not, this will look a little bit random. cluster feeding is a little bit different to cluster evenings. So you get the dropping into times when you might see cluster feeding, so week 3, week 6, and week 12. And week 3, week 6, week 12 are when baby has growth spurts. And so they'll want to cluster feed, they want to feed more often, maybe for longer than usual to help to bump up your milk supply, but also to meet their the needs, that fuel that they need to grow in that period.
Okay, so how do we know when our baby wants to feed? So we have this language called cues, feeding cues. So this is how baby's telling us that they're hungry. And what we want to do is we want to observe for them and respond to their cues. And we've identified that there are early feeding cues. So that's when baby might be in their bed just wriggling a little bit. If you're a bit more movement there, you might hear some sucking sounds. They might bring their fist up and start having a little suck on their hands. That's their tongue poking out and looking around, moving their head from side to side, looking for the breast. What we know is that if we pick up our babies then and offer the breast, they're nice and calm, they're just starting to think about feeding, their feeding instincts are coming in, and we latch them on then. It's a really great idea. So don't worry so much about, getting them up, changing the nappy, especially in the first week or so, because we know that when babies wake up, those early feeding cues, and then we take them to the change table, we change them, we've woken them fully up, and most babies don't like their bottom exposed in their nappy change in those first few days. They're still getting used to that. So pop them up and pop them onto breast will be a lot more successful usually. Looking into the mid cues, if we've missed the early cues, we're starting to get a little bit more fussy, making a bit more noise, wriggling a bit more strongly, arching their back, and sometimes a little bit of grizzling going on. And again, pick them up and feed them. Yeah, if we wait until the late feeding cues, which sometimes you are, some family members, because that's what they were taught, don't pick them up until they're crying. Well, we know it's just like us. When we're hungry and you walk in the door, you've been out all day and you haven't eaten, and you're kind of opening the fridge and looking for food straight away, and you get a little bit desperate. So if we wait until for the late cues, baby's fully awake, shouting at us, saying, "Hurry up, Mum, I told you earlier and you missed it, and now I'm really hungry," and they're less patient. They're less patient with them for themselves, they're less patient with us trying to latch. So picking those cues can make life just a lot easier. Keeping baby in the same room as you during the day when you're doing other things, so you still hear those cues, is really a good idea. And at night, of course, you'll hear them. But then don't be hard on yourself, because it's like learning a new language. Your baby's learning how to tell you he's hungry. You're learning how to interpret his language. So if you miss some cues and you're at that screaming stage, that's okay. We all get it wrong sometimes. Don't be hard on yourself. That reset button is skin to skin with you. If you pop baby, take your clothes off, just a nappy on your bed chest, sit on the couch, be comfy, walk around and rock a little bit. Put a blanket over both of you and just spend a few minutes calming down, rocking and talking and smelling your baby. It'll help with that oxytocin release. It'll help with you relaxing, help with baby relaxing, and then sit down and latching will generally be easier. Yeah. So let's think about skin to skin as a reset button when things aren't going quite so well. We know that when babies are skin to skin with mums, that our cortisol, our stress hormone levels are lower, our blood pressure lowers, babies as well, our heart rate lowers, our breathing becomes more in sync, temperature, of course, in that sync with baby, and we keep them warm skin to skin. But mainly it's that stress that helps to just reduce it all, and then we start again with the latching. Responding to cues will ideally means that you will make enough milk with that good latch we've talked about. Supply and demand, if we're feeding well, draining the breast well, then our breasts are getting the message to keep on making milk. Feeding, so it's more ideal to feed to baby's cues rather than having a schedule, watching the clock. Your baby doesn't know about clocks and times. You often hear lots of information given out about how often you should feed babies. Really respond to your baby's needs. Sometimes it's half an hour later, even though they had a good feed half an hour ago. Sometimes it's an hour and a half later, sometimes it's 3 hours later. Keep an eye on that and respond to your baby, and that will generally make your breastfeeding journey and your milk supply go well. Sometimes you hear about 3-hourly feeding. If you do, and if you hear that recommended, sometimes it's recommended for smaller babies, babies that are born a little early or having some feeding challenges. Remember, 3-hourly, what we miss when it's said is it's on cue, 3-hourly. So 3-hourly might be our maximum. If baby's not waking at 3, we'll wake them gently off breast, compared with if they woke at an hour and a half or 2 hours, we're not going to make wait till 3. 3 is our maximum, but we're responding to them sooner and feeding them sooner if they want to, if that makes sense, because that sometimes gets parents a little bit confused. Some people are saying 3-hourly, some people are saying whenever they want it. It's both. The maximum is 3 hours, but not for a normal term baby that's feeding well. That's just when the restrictions put on your baby's feeding. That makes sense.
So this is more on just being really responsive and just watching your baby, feeding your baby when they're showing you that they might be wanting feed. And while you're learning to pick up cues, it's fine just to offer and see if they take it as well. There's some really great resources that we can send through, but a couple of little mantras up here, watch the baby, not the clock, I think is an old classic that is really, really good to listen to. With one of my babies, I even threw my clock in the bin. We feed so often. It's just done with it. Just watch the baby. Listen for swallows. Look for that. That baby is getting the milk out. That baby's able to do that in a pretty good rhythm. Sometimes what we see is babies are on the breast, but they're not sucking and swallowing. So listen out for swallows. Is a good little thing to do. Use those breast compressions to help that along if you need to. Make the right amount of milk for your baby. So when we're just breastfeeding to cue, that's what we're doing. We've got a little bit more on that soon. So remember to feed the baby, don't feed the freezer. And then we'll put through a couple of those little videos as well to BreastfeedingNZ.
The next slide's a little video that we hope you can hear the sound in that, about showing at the beginning, it's showing a baby feeding not quite so effectively with not such a good latch. You'll notice when they bring baby in nice and close and get that bigger latch, you'll see a whole lot more effective feeding. Again, it's not something you know about when it's your first baby, so get your midwife, your breastfeeding supporter, enroll in something like Rito Ora, or somewhere where you can get that support, and get us coming in and watching feeds with you, because it's not until you've got someone sitting alongside you watching with you that gives you the confidence to know your baby's feeding well. And that's when doubts creep in, when we're not sure, so get some support.
When I touched, he is taking rapid shallow sucks without the process that indicate he is swallowing milk. It's also getting sleepy because the flow of milk is slow.
If you can't hear this is an effective feed. This is a deep latch and lots of feeding.
Portions of his jaw. Now each suck his baby takes results in his swallow.
See the chin drop and the big deep excursions of the jaw tells us these big swallowing happening. Can you raise your hand and just tell us if you heard that? The talking on the video? Somebody breathing?
Oh, yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. So having someone sitting alongside you that's experienced, like your midwife, watching a feed with you and giving you confidence that your baby's feeding well is really important.
When I touched,
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So when in those first 6 weeks, when we have healthy full-term babies, it's a really good idea, where possible, acknowledging it's not always possible for so many different reasons, but where possible, just keeping it simple, latching baby directly to the breast when baby's queuing to be fed will just really help to avoid complications and things like nipple confusion, thinking about when every time baby's feeding, they're learning how to feed. They're still figuring it out, and so are we as parents. So latching baby directly to the breast means that they get really confident, they get skilled in what it is to be breastfeeding, using that big, wide open mouth to feed, rather than other things like dummies and bottle teats that have a smaller mouth. So where possible, just latching baby directly to the breast. What this is also good for is it helps to regulate our milk supply in the first 6 weeks. Our body's figuring out, especially in the first 6 weeks, it always is, but it's trying to establish our milk supply. And so if we're just latching our baby to the breast, then our bodies can make the right amount of milk for our babies. Not too little, not too much. Both of those things can be issues that we then have to have to manage. I guess it goes back to the old saying about, if you want, what about the All Blacks?
If you want to breastfeed, you have to practice breastfeeding. So if we're talking about the All Blacks, the All Blacks coach doesn't give the All Blacks a cricket ball to practice with. So if you want to be a breastfeeding mother, you need to breastfeed and get that support to do that. Yeah. If we're giving lots of bottles and lots, but we still want to be breastfeeding, then we have to get support to make that switch. Yeah.
And there are a lot of things on the market that we can buy, either to put in baby's mouth or to put onto our breasts. Sometimes so if they're not used in the right situation, then they can cause a few more complications. So keeping it simple and avoiding use of those things as well in the first 6 weeks, where possible, unless you've been advised to, will just help to really get your breastfeeding journey off to a nice smooth start.
And yeah, they're tools that are designed to help with certain situations, but not something that every mother needs to be using, because often can cause more issues than they solve. Yeah, if it's something that you're advised that you need, then get hold of somebody that works in breastfeeding, with that knowledge to support you to use it or assess if you need it. If that makes sense. And again, Laurie raised your hand. Has that been there for it? Yeah. Sure. And again, this is about the same thing. So again, just a revision of what we've been saying. If you're having difficulties, like we spoke earlier about, skin to skin is a good reset. If baby's sleeping on you skin to skin, even if you're struggling with that latching, if you can pick baby up and have them skin to skin with you, sitting on the couch, make sure you're comfy, you've got something to eat, some drinks around you, something to do while baby's sleeping that keeps your mind busy, and you're just doing something that you enjoy and feel relaxed, and let baby sleep on you for a couple of hours before baby wakes up. Because what you do when they're sleeping on you, you've got all that good oxytocin that's helping. Skin to skin, like I said, is a reset, and it helps to bring in baby's feeding instincts. So they're going by instinct more than, crying and wanting food. But you also feel those really early feeding cues when baby's wriggling around, or you can hear that. So then you can direct baby straight down to the breast. So good place to start and get some help. Like we showed you, getting baby in, using the techniques to get that deep latch. There's some good resources which we will send, that you can have a look at, or you can contact us to get that extra support. Get the support early. It's much easier to help and get things on the right track if we get in early rather than later when it's a bigger problem, like anything in life really. Making sure your breasts are drained well, really important to making sure you've got a milk supply, and we've done a lot of talking about feeding on cue and how regularly that can be. And if our breasts fill up and stay full and we're watching and thinking it's not feed time yet, when your breasts sit there full for a while, your body's already getting a little bit of a message to slow down production. Like we said, when your breasts are softer, your body's in full milk making mode. And the global health media, that's that video in its entirety is great for before you have baby or when baby's here to watch the techniques for latching. Unswaddle baby, get them in close like we showed you. Also swaddling under the arms, so if baby's got their arms out, they use their hands to cool down, particularly when we're heating our rooms at the moment. The extra surface area helps them to cool down, but also they can put their hands up here, and that's part of that language to tell you that they're getting hungry. Anytime, feel free to come off mute and ask us some questions as well.
So a couple more tips on the problem solving front. Exactly what Jenny was saying, just responding to your baby, feeding on cue. spend the time getting that deep latch. Make sure that you drain your breasts well. So stay on one side for as long as you can hear the swallows. Don't swap sides too soon unless you're advised to for your own circumstances. Get support early, and definitely utilise your midwife visits as well. I think we'll run our last poll here before we pop into questions. One more poll. Okay, you should be able to see that on your screen. It's just a simple yes or no. Can you all see that poll?
Do we do anything else?
Yes. Stop sharing. All right, you should be able to see that poll now. Thanks, guys. So we'll give 15 more seconds. We'll do 4 more seconds. Probably everyone there. All right, we'll share results. So we've got a 50-50 split on the yes or no here. So if the baby has fed to sleep, so a baby, it's really, really normal for babies to, let me stop sharing that with you there. Stop sharing altogether. So if a baby has fed to sleep, so baby's had a lovely kind of meal inducing sleep, they've tired themselves out, and you're like, cool, I've got it, the baby's asleep. You can actually just leave them to sleep. So a breastfed baby particularly doesn't need to be woken up to be burped every time. And what this can do is it can unintentionally set up the cycle of baby just being awake and being unsettled. So if your baby's fed to sleep, any which way you feed your baby, you can just bring the baby up. We wouldn't recommend or suggest that you then kind of pat, wake your baby up. You've started that cycle all over again. So you can just gently rub your baby's back, but they don't need to be burped. This idea that what we used to think, I think, is that we used to think wind kind of started with a feed and then entered the tummy and just caused havoc in the tummy, as if it was this perfectly formed kind of air bubble that just bounced around in there. But that's not the case. We know that gas, so burps, farts, they actually start from fermentation in the gut. So we don't need to wake our babies up with a burp. Just let them sleep. And the other point was about the nappies, right?
Yeah, especially in the middle of the night when you're just, if you've got baby near you, you're going to pick baby up and feed them. You don't have to change the nappy every feed. Nappies these days, they're not the old cloth nappies that used to keep the bottom wet. They work well. So if your baby's feeding quite regularly every couple of hours through the night, change the nappy every second feed. Yeah, as we said before, waking them up. Changing the nappy, wakes them up and gets them startled and awake and often shouting at us. So make life easier. Unless your baby's got a red sore bottom in the beginning, there's no need to change the nappy every feed during the night time.
Even just sometimes a really good barrier cream instead of the nappies can be really helpful. And where possible, trying to avoid flicking on all the lights. That again can, light is one of the
stimulus that will wake you up.
So we get less sleep, baby gets less sleep. So where possible, just keep your baby close, arms length away if possible, if that's what works for your family, and just bring baby for a feed. If baby's fed to sleep, and just go back to sleep.
So I think we're at the point where we're just going to open it up and answer any questions you might have. If anybody's got any questions about what we've said or anything else that we haven't said that you are wondering about, you can pop it in the chat or you can come off mute and ask us.
or any little tips that you yourself have found really handy that you just want to share with the other mums.
When you should swap sides, when it said, do we know when you should swap sides when feeding? And again, that's an individual, but in general, we would offer one side. If you're still hearing swallowing, baby's feeding well and engaged in what they're doing, and it's comfortable, then keep baby on that side. Maybe do some compressions like we talked about earlier. Baby comes off, you might sit them up and just, another little reset. We can call it burping, but we're really just sitting them up, seeing what they're ready, and then they'll start to tell us, like looking again for some more, pop them back onto the same side. And if we're hearing swallowing slowing down on that side, or baby's getting a little bit like regularly, a bit fussy at the breast, then swap to the other side. So we've drained one side well. If we're talking about in the first few days, say the first 4 or 5 days, that might be different advice, and that's where sometimes we get a bit muddled, because we say you're told to feed on one side for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then swap the other sides and use both sides. As you saw from the very beginning session, there's a bit of colostrum here, there's a bit of colostrum here. So feed, you might even go feed again. Once your milk comes in, your breasts are quite full, we would suggest going back to the same breast a couple of times, and then, like I've said, if that's happening, he's wanting more, baby's wanting more, or getting a bit scratchy on this side and giving you some indication he wants a bit more faster, then you can switch to the other side. So it's kind of individual. We don't know how much milk we hold in our breasts. We all hold different amounts in our breasts. So some of us need to feed every 2 hours, both breasts, and baby will get the same amount as someone that might feed one breast for 20 minutes every 3 or 4 hours. What we do know is that in general, babies will get the same amount in 24 hours. We just need to keep going back for more if we hold less in our breasts, and it's nothing to do with breast size. That makes sense. So if you've got a family of 5, 2 families of 5, and somebody's got a big fridge at home, a double door fridge, and someone's got a little underbench fridge, imagine that mum or whoever's doing the shopping in that house needs to go and fill up this big double door fridge maybe once a week, where this mum might need to go and fill up the fridge every day. That's an analogy that makes a bit of sense. So comparing what your friend, your neighbour, your sister does is not helpful when you're feeding, because it's really every mum, baby and lactation's individual. That answer your question? If the latch is shallow but isn't causing pain,
is that a problem?
Do that one.
It's great that it's not causing any pain. We would be also look at the shape of the nipple before and after the feed to kind of that will indicate how shallow that latch might be. When the nipple, like before a feed, it should kind of come out after the feed almost the same shape. It might be a little bit elongated, that's okay. But what if it is quite shallow, then you might notice it looking kind of squashed or sandwiched, or like if you have a new lipstick and it's just kind of flat on one side, that's quite a shallow latch. That would say to us that, hey, maybe this baby's not getting as much milk out in that feed as another baby where there's no kind of squashing of that nipple. So have a look at that, would be the first thing. Listening out for swallows, I think my mind kind of is going to, hey, well, how much milk is baby getting? Let's have a look at the whole picture and not just what this one latch looks like as well. So an indication, like Jenny talked about one of the cards of how do we know how much milk baby's getting? What goes in must come out. It's going to be the nappies. So looking to see if, hey, is your baby developing normally, meeting good milestones? They've got a good amount of wet and dirty nappies and the weight's okay. Looking at that overall picture and trying not to get caught up on the look of a latch. Saying isn't causing pain, that's good, it feels okay. Doesn't always have to look perfect, but you're looking at that wider picture as well, I think.
Yeah, and just hearing the swallows and making sure that baby's draining your breast well, so you know what it feels like before and what it feels like afterwards is also another good indication. Heavy and full before, but softer and lighter afterwards. And will having a C-section affect my milk supply? But the research shows us it doesn't. It sometimes can be that it's a little bit delayed, as in I'm talking a day or so. Again, it depends on the whole situation. If you've had a long induction for days and or you've had a booked date where you've come in and had that C-section, can all have different effects, and different effects varying as well. Of going through the labour, we get the hormones and things that help, but then we might be tired, and it could have been a long haul compared with coming in and just having the section. So different again, reason why you're having the section. If you have diabetes or for other reasons, then sometimes that can have a little bit of a delay, but nothing significant. What you need to do is go through that feeding, making sure the latch is effective, all the things that we've talked about, get support in the hospital. Baby will still do that cluster feeding. We talked about that when they're feeding a whole lot, and it's often the second night. To be able to go with that and not restrict baby's feeds, and also not give anything else which will curb baby's hunger and not want to feed so often, can affect your milk supply. And saying that, it's a lot of work on that second night when you've had a section of baby wants to feed constant. So you need really good support. So talking with the staff, making sure you've got a support person there where you breastfeed. When baby wants to, then you've got someone you can hand baby back to, and baby can sleep there like Alicia's baby on dad, grandma, somebody that's your support person. And when half an hour and a half later, when he wants another feed, they can hand back to you. It's good teamwork, and it means that mum gets to go, gets through that clustering time, baby meets his needs met, and your milk supply is supported, and you get some rest in between. Does that answer that question for you?
Are there any other questions, or is there anything else that anyone wanted to talk about? I think next week's session as well is Q&A with our LCG, but
no more questions? Thank you.
cool. Thanks guys, thanks for coming.
Enjoyed chatting with you. It's warm in here.